When Robin was shut out of the tiny room, I confess I didn't notice immediately, caught up as I was in struggling free from the arms of the monstrously large creature person. This led to an undignified descent to the floor. Then something beeped, and the room moved, making me tumble against the wall and lay there blinking in confusion. Though it shouldn't have been a surprise, the face that appeared close before me was something of a shock. Large, dark, utterly alien, and too close for comfort. For the split second while my eyes focused, the creature made quiet grunting noises. Then I'm afraid I ruined the moment by shrieking in startlement. The creature jerked back. I scrambled away over a curved bench and hit the wall of the very tiny room, spinning to behold the off-worlder that regarded me with equal alarm. After a moment of heavy breathing from both of us, I said, "Sorry, you scared me. What happened?" Those massive hands moved in several quick gestures that I didn't understand in the slightest. I realized that we wouldn't be able to say a thing to each other without a translator. The room was otherwise empty. "Where's Robin?" I asked, hoping he recognized the sound of the human's name. He seemed to, getting more animated in his gestures and finally pointing at the window in the room's only door. I got to my feet, still a bit lightheaded, and climbed up on the bench where I strained to see out the high window. A field of random detritus greeted my eyes, with a mostly intact ship in the center. Part of the front end was sheared off. Numerous tiny shapes were moving away from it in all directions. All of this was shrinking in size, and I realized that we were in one of those tiny shapes. The rest must be full of smuggler aliens, blast their shell-less hides, and hopefully, one human. I didn't know why Robin wasn't in with us, and I couldn't ask my current companion. What had she called him? A dragon? Named Gorilla? No, the other way around. "Dragon?" I said, to which he looked at me sharply. "Good." "Zephyr," I stated, pressing all 4 hands to my chest plate. He nodded somewhat impatiently, making a gesture with his 2 hands that looked like reeds moving in the wind. Then he grunted and held up one hand like a beak that opened and closed, pointing out the window. "Robin?" "Yes, I hope she made it out safely," I said, aware that my other words likely wouldn't mean much to him. "Where are we going now?" When I stopped making sounds that he knew, the gorilla turned away from the door to look at something on the far wall. I followed his gaze to a view screen and some form of control panel. While I lost no time in scrambling toward it, my larger companion easily beat me there and started poking at things. Assuming he couldn't know how to work it, I started to protest, only to click my beak shut and let him work. What did I know about this alien's technological familiarity? Whether through skill or luck, Dragon caused the screen to change from indecipherable charts to another view of the outside. A dotted line appeared, which seemed to predict the path we were to take through the rocks and garbage that still lay ahead of us. Dragon sat back with a grunt of satisfaction. We both watched things slide by. I kept glancing back at the ship in the distance. Suddenly we were in the clear, and ahead of us floated the distant, glittering object that could only be the fabled city in space. I forgot our predicament and pressed forward for a better look. This was something that all of my friends hoped to see someday. Contact with the humans was still such an exotic thing, with all parties careful not to offend anyone. Only the highest-ranking officials and diplomats had been allowed off-world. Surely that would change. We all knew there were many species coming and going through the space city. It was only a matter of time before the average rockback would be able to take a trip into the sky and join them. But I got to be ahead of the crowd. This was beyond exciting, despite the circumstances. As I was taking it in and watching the improbably large structure grow closer, the screen changed on its own. A human face appeared, wearing a stern expression and speaking to us sharply. He, I think it was male, face hair, broke off mid-word, peering at us in surprise. I realized this was a 2-way view screen. Another human appeared behind the first, adding more words in a language I didn't know. These sounded like questions. Dragon was gesturing beside me, no doubt explaining things. I chimed in for good measure, but the expressions on those 2 faces didn't become less puzzled. The first one said something else to us, which meant nothing. The screen abruptly changed back to a view of the approaching space city. I looked up at Dragon, He made a gesture that looked impatient and possibly rude, then sat down on the floor to wait. I turned back to the screen, trying to recapture the magic of my first glimpse of the space city. It was much closer now, and I could make out the shapes of many tiny ships stationed around it. Several were peeling away from their formation to head in our direction. This made me a tad nervous, but the ships didn't shoot. Instead, they gathered around us in a protective huddle and did something that made our tiny vessel shake. Suddenly, we were taking a different route to the station, around the side to where a door slid open for us. We were being escorted in. Whether as prisoners or honored guests, we had yet to discover. I had no idea what life was like on that space station.